Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second topic of emotional intelligence in our professional development series for 2016. I'm Jackie Kiger, and I'll be your host today as we visit the topic of when smart is dumb and how we can benefit from this information in our online teaching. I appreciate everybody making time to be here this evening. I see we have almost 60 people so far who've shown up, and I really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this. Our goal through the College of Education's monthly Ed Talks is to provide you with ideas and approaches and tools to better facilitate your online class and build relationships with your students that will help them succeed and increase retention in your classrooms. Our presentations are only as good as you apply them in your teaching. It really is our hope that what we present here today will help you do just that, benefit your students in your approach to teaching. Our guest speaker for this month's topic of when smart is dumb is Dr. Melissa Phillips. And I'd like to take a moment and formally introduce her. Dr. Melissa Phillips is an assistant professor within the College of Education here at Ashford University. She holds undergraduate degrees in English and secondary education, advanced degrees in special education and teacher leadership, and a terminal degree in special education. As well as teaching here in the College of Education, she has also developed curriculum in the Masters of Arts in Education degree and the new Masters of Special Education degree. She has several years experience within the K through 12 setting, focusing on classrooms with various disability and behavior-related disorders, including autism and specific learning disabilities. She'll tell you that her favorite aspect of teaching here at Ashford is providing new and future teachers with teaching and positive behavior support strategies that prepare them as they enter the field of education. She uses humor in her teaching with every opportunity, as she feels it's important for new and future teachers to realize the value of laughter and learning, especially while trying to diffuse difficult situations. I would like to remind everyone that the official reference for all of our emotional intelligence Ed Talks are based on the book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ by Daniel Goleman. We're hopeful that you have added it to your professional library collection. It's now my pleasure to pass the microphone over to our guest presenter, Dr. Melissa Phillips. Melissa, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm Melissa, and welcome to Ed Talks. I was a new Baltimore City middle school teacher with only 4 months experience. I had what I thought was a really smart idea. But when I told the other teachers, those with more experience, they told me that it was actually a really dumb idea. I told them that what I was going to do was take all of my students to the local fire station on Christmas Eve. The firemen and firewomen were looking for volunteers to hand out gifts to children who were homeless. The other teachers told me it was a dumb idea because, 1, I wasn't getting paid, 2, it was during our vacation time, and 3, it was a liability since the school was closed anyway. I thought I was being smart, but I guess I wasn't. I was thankful to have those more experienced teachers around to let me know it was really a dumb idea. Now, I'd like you to raise your hand if you consider yourself to be pretty smart. If you could see through the computer, you'd notice my hand waving in the air too. Next, go ahead and put it down if you've done something where, in hindsight, you thought, geez, that was really dumb. If I could go back, I would have approached things totally different. In his book, Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman explains that IQ contributes to about 20% of the factors that determine life success. That leaves 80% to other factors. When smart is dumb is not referring to intelligence that can be measured by an SAT score or an IQ test, but rather your emotional intelligence quotient, your EQ. For example, how well can you read a room? Or what is your intrinsic motivation or your self-control? Or your ability to empathize with others? Oftentimes we let our intelligence or our IQ get in the way of our good teaching, our EQ. Let's consider how these facts translate into the real world. According to the Vice President of CareerBuilder, in a recovering economy, employers want people who can effectively make decisions in stressful situations, empathize with the needs of their colleagues and clients to deliver the very best results. In a 2011 CareerBuilder survey of over 2,600 hiring managers and human resources, 71% reported that they value emotional intelligence over IQ. 34% said they're placing more emphasis on emotional intelligence during their interview process. And 59% said that they wouldn't hire someone with a high IQ but a low EQ. When it comes time for promotions, 75% of these hiring managers said that they would consider employees with the highest emotional intelligence for promotion first. What's more, IBM conducted a 2012 survey of over 1,700 CEOs who all reported saying their top 2 needs are for employees to collaborate and connect with customers, skills driven by emotional intelligence. Corporate America is embracing the self-science of emotional intelligence in the workplace as they recognize the huge payoff in profitability, employee retention, and health benefits. Survey results collected in 2010 by the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence found that salespeople who demonstrated a higher level of emotional intelligence sold almost $100,000 more product annually than their peers. Data collected from a Coca-Cola survey found that those employees who participated in emotional intelligence training exceeded their performance targets by 15%, while those employees who did not have the training missed their target by 15%, a 30% difference overall. Companies that hire emotionally intelligent leaders who keep their employees engaged earn a payoff of reduced company sick time and improved productivity to the tune of 21%. But how do these corporate world facts translate to online teaching, emotional intelligence, IQ? While advancements in technology have given us the power to communicate across the globe at lightning speed, access information at the blink of an eye, and use real-time images to explore the world around us, it has also changed the dynamics of self-science and emotional intelligence. Consider what life might look like if we had a do-over button, or 2, or 1 in every room of the house, and of course 1 next to your steering wheel. I would need 1 on my keyboard and 1 on my cell phone. Before email, text, and GChat, if I had a disagreement with a colleague, a problem with a student, I thought about what I wanted to say before picking up the phone, dialing a 7-digit number from memory, or flipping through my Rolodex, and then talking to a person on the other end. I might have written down some ideas before making that call. But first, I would search the house and in between the sofa cushions for the cordless phone. I might have had a face-to-face conversation where I once taught at one of those old-fashioned universities, the ones with the blinding overhead projectors, the ones where you ended up with chalk dust all over your hands and pants, where my students would walk into my cinder block, windowless office, sit in a chair, and talk. I could see their facial expressions, I could hear their voices, and I could read their nonverbal cues. But now, like Pavlov's dog, whenever I hear a bing, ping, or ring, I stop whatever I'm doing to immediately respond to an email, text, Twitter, or tweet. Instead of having a thoughtful back and forth conversation with words in person or on the phone, now brief messages are exchanged with emoticons and abbreviations like LOL, BTW, and TAFN. But now, back to that question of translating corporate facts to online teaching. We can relate the success of emotional intelligence salespeople and leaders to student retention goals and instructor productivity. Early in my online teaching career, Trinidad identified one of my students' papers as lacking almost 100% originality. I thought I was being smart by immediately submitting an iRoads report to the university. But if I had taken the time to review the sources that were identified in the report, I would have noticed that, in reality, the student was recycling her own work. While still technically plagiarism, depending on each instructor's class policy, and if I was being smart, I would have talked to her about plagiarism and talked to her about recycling work and what she should do differently next time. But I was dumb, and she dropped my course. Think back to that emotional intelligence test you took last month to prepare for Jackie's Ed Talk. Being aware of what makes me dumb helps make me smarter. I scored top of the class in social awareness. My strengths lie in being an empathetic listener, understanding others, and taking an active interest in their concerns. In the area of relationship management, my score indicated that I often let my intellect get in the way of good teaching. So if I had that do-over button, I wouldn't be so dumb. I would have used my EQ strength to build the confidence of that student who dropped my class. Consider how you scored in each one of those quadrants: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. In what ways can you use your scores to become a smarter online teacher? There's no real way to separate IQ from EQ. Let's take Steve Jobs, for example. In 1997, he explained to Apple's board members how passion was the key to revitalizing the company, which is almost bankrupt. He said that Apple is not about making boxes for people to get their jobs done, although they do that well. Apple is about something more. Its core value is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. The same thing can be said for online teaching. Knowing the theory behind education, reading the research, and understanding the foundations of online teaching is not enough. That is only 20% that makes up the content of the course. The other 80% is how we teach our course and the passion for what we do in creating future leaders. I'll tell you what, if I offered to split a winning lottery ticket with you, I'll keep 80% and you can keep the other 20. That's fair, right? What about only providing your students with 20% of your class? Just the content, just the facts. Is that fair? When your students learn from that 20% that makes up your knowledge and are inspired by the 80% that make up your passion, compassion, and empathy, they benefit 100%. When I was completing my master's thesis, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Thankfully, I had a smart professor. Legitimately, she could have encouraged me to take it incomplete. That may have been a caring response, but it would not have helped me stay the course. She could have reminded me of her late policy. That would have been very uncaring and done nothing for my personal or educational course. But she didn't do either of those things. She was smart. She was compassionate. She was empathetic. And she showed me the grace I needed to meet my personal and professional obligations. If she was dumb, I may have been like my student and dropped the course. I may not have even completed my degree. Consider what your 80% looks like. How are you using your strengths to inspire your students? Remember that story about my dumb decision to take my students to the fire hall? What I forgot to mention earlier, I took them anyway because I felt like it was the right thing to do. But I wasn't sure if it was the smart thing to do until 15 years later when I bumped into Sierra. The first thing she said to me was, "Remember when you took us out of the fire hall? Best kid Christmas ever." And the truth was, I did remember. I remembered walking into my very first classroom with 8 students who were each identified as having emotional and behavioral problems. I remembered one student who ate his eyebrows due to an anxiety disorder. I remembered another student who was often dropped off by the police at school on the way to taking his mother to be booked downtown again, where, coincidentally, the prison's head warden was the guardian of another student in my class. And I remembered that as the weather grew colder and Christmas grew near, my students' only focus was on all the new stuff they'd be getting. And I remembered thinking that a lecture on the value of intangibles, such as health and family, would fall on deaf ears. And that's when I had my really dumb idea. On the morning of Christmas Eve, I picked up all 8 students in my Jeep Cherokee. My kids, who bragged to their friends about getting arrested for gang-related violence, transformed that day into Santa's helpers. They passed out presents, did magic tricks, cooked on the food line, and volunteered to stay late and clean up. And that was when I knew it. I knew that I didn't let my intellect get in the way of good teaching. I had made a smart decision. At Ashford University, we're in the business of cultivating emotionally intelligent, future-driven professionals who will advocate for, lead, and serve the communities where they work and live. But that's not our only purpose. Without our students, there's no Ashford University. So, just like the business world, happy customers hang around. Let's take Nordstrom's, for example. I hate shopping. I hate malls. It's not my thing, but I love Nordstrom's, and here's why. New employees are given a copy of the company handbook to memorize on their first day at work. It is one index card that reads, "Welcome to Nordstrom. Our number one goal is to provide outstanding customer service." Rule number 1, use good judgment in all situations. There will be no additional rules. This was the emotionally intelligent foundation of John Nordstrom's business model. I will leave you with this food for thought. Bill Gates said, take away our 20 most important people, and I tell you, we will be an unimportant company. Even though Bill Gates was talking about the 80-20 rule of business, the same can be said for when SMART is done. Think about a time when you used only 20% and missed the mark on the other 80% during an online teaching experience. If you had the chance to do it over, if you had that do-over button, how would you be smarter? What would you do differently? Thank you.
No, thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that your approach here today was one filled with personal examples of not only realizing when we perhaps have done not so smart things in our teaching, but also the value of using that 80%, which is the emotional aspect of reaching and teaching our students. And while I do not have a do-over button to utilize, I would welcome such technology. But what I've learned here today is that I do have a pause button, and that I could apply the pause button before my intellectual knee-jerk reaction is allowed to respond. I certainly appreciate your message that in our online setting, we are being dumb when we're not going all out for our students. I would like to now open up the chat window and the phone lines and encourage everyone to comment on what your thoughts are here today as a result of this perspective of emotional intelligence as it applies to your classroom teaching. Specifically, how might this awareness help you in your teaching? And if you feel like sharing what would be your do-over moment, we'd love to hear that from you also. If you would like to speak on the phone, all you need to do is choose #6, and that will unmute you. And if it doesn't unmute you, let me know in the chat window. I'm pretty sure it does, though. Well, thank you, Kathy. This is, I found it to be very powerful and very moving. And we do, we have to go outside of the box, I think, to do great teaching. And that's our goal here, is to encourage everyone, go that distance. Well, I'm glad, Florence, it is making you think about some of the things that you can do in your class, and that's our hope. Brenda says it's definitely something that I've employed as some people have a hard time grasping APA or just need some guidance about what to do. And Barbara, or I'm sorry, Brenda, you make a very good point about that. I teach a first aid course, so APA is certainly something we talk about a lot. And a lot of times it's just simply pointing them to the right, resource in the library, or taking a minute to just tell them how to do it in APA format. I think there's much value in that. I think the grade book should be a teaching moment. It shouldn't just be a place where we record success or failures, especially if somebody is losing points on something. They absolutely should know why. Tony Valley. Hi, Dr. Tony. It's good to see you here. Let me scroll back up. I missed my spot here on what he was sharing that we do. Tony says we need to pay attention to what is going on with our students. And his personal experience is that it aids in this. And also a shout out to Melissa. We appreciate it very much, Tony. It's good to see you here. Flexibility. Absolutely, Nancy. I appreciate that. And then Sandra identifies that many of the online students have issues that are beyond their control. Absolutely, absolutely true. And what happens is many times they think they'll go with an online as an option because it's keeping them being all things to all people in other aspects of their life. And one of the things I tell my students, I certainly would encourage you to do the same, is I'll ask them, are you trying to find time to be a graduate student? I teach in the graduate program. Or are you making time to be a graduate student? And then I explain to them how that works, because if you wait until the end of the day to find time, you'll probably run out of time. But if you have an hour to be that student and you tell everybody in your world that that's your time to be the student, I did that when I was working on my doctorate. You know, my wife knew, my kids knew they could count on me unless it was between 5 and 6 p.m., then they couldn't count on me because I was going to be a student. And that became the norm. Jessica, thank you for your comments there. I know, I teach Introduction to Teaching and Learning, but I spend a lot of my time on how to be a successful online student, teaching them that as well. Of course, I didn't show up with all these great tools. I kind of had to make mistakes along the way. I was probably could come up with a whole roster of students would tell you all the dumb things that I've done because I kind of had to find my way to utilize my 80%. I think that's important too. This is not just, hey, show up and do it. We have to kind of ease into those waters of being a proficient online instructor. And it kind of goes back, in my view, goes back to and you've heard me say this before, as an instructor, am I a referee or am I a coach? I do have to be both, but I prefer to be the coach. I prefer to coach the team. I prefer to have good team members that are listening to the coach because I'm giving them good advice. That's what I prefer. But I also realize I do have to be the referee on occasion. Yeah, there's lots of typing going on here. We have 71 participants this evening. I'm just tickled to death with that. Thank you all for making time to come out here. Hi, Mark. That's a good point. I don't know that we have a course that is specific about emotional intelligence, but that's certainly something that we could entertain. And our first step in that is making our faculty aware of emotional intelligence. And really, I don't feel like Melissa and I are here telling you anything new. We're just bringing perhaps a re-invitation to the awareness of that and how that can be a very good approach. Kara mentions about time management resources. I have a posting. Hey, Kara, if you want to email me, I'll send it to you. And anybody, I'll send it to you. But I use it in my week 1 discussions, and the topic might be on Bloom's taxonomy or something, but that's not what's important. I post an announcement telling my students, only read this if you want to be a successful graduate student. And they all read it, and it has everything to do with time management. It has nothing to do with Bloom's taxonomy because I feel like I need to introduce that, and I step them through what I just shared with you about making time or finding time, and then tell everybody in the world that's your time. Sure, you bet. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, the do-over, hey Keith, good to see you, buddy. The do-over is simply to explain or look at subject matter from a different perspective. Absolutely. And I've done that. Admittedly, I guess I'll be very transparent here. I see an email and I'm thinking, wow, that student's kind of short with me. I wouldn't speak to someone like that. It's not that they're speaking poorly, but it's just not, I wish you put a little more thought into that email. Only to find out later out to me. And so I have to remember they're reaching out to me for a reason. They might need a lifeline. They might need a little assurance that has nothing to do with the learning objectives of the course, but it has everything to do with making them feel like they can do this, that they can be successful. Oh, Gladys, I feel bad for you. So you teach 8th grade. Those middle school kids, boy, they can be a lot of fun as they're moving from adolescent to teenage years. She says that teaching becomes automatic in terms of I must explain everything thoroughly, and then I must post announcements more than once. I repeat the important announcements every week. Well, a level of redundancy can prove to be very helpful and very successful. Just scrolling down through here to see if I've missed something. And if anybody would like to go on the phone, I know you guys like hearing my voice, but if you would like to come on the phone, certainly I welcome that opportunity as well. But I know it's not for everybody. Oh, Laura, try teaching kindergarten. I couldn't do it. Quick sidebar, I was a guest speaker at an elementary school a couple of weeks ago, and somebody should have told me that. They have no idea what rhetorical questions are, because I was in an auditorium full of kids, and as I was speaking rhetorically, they all wanted to answer my questions as if they were not rhetorical. And I felt like I'd done a really good job, and when I was done, the only questions they had for me was, how tall am I? So there you have it. That was my elementary school experience. Emailing the announcements, I'll do that too. I use templates also in the course I teach, homework templates, and I will post them as announcements. The thing I like about email, if we're going to get down to maybe a couple of strategies that we use, is I feel like if I post an announcement, they have to come to the class to get it. But if I send them something in an email, I feel like I'm tapping them on the shoulder if they're on the subway, or I'm tapping them on the shoulder if they're at home watching TV and perhaps their email pushes through to their smartphone, which in most cases it does. I like that. I like going and finding them in their everyday life and go, oh, by the way, it's me, Dr. Kiger, got a little something I want you to be aware of. And then it kind of reminds them, well, let me at least be thinking about that. So when I do log into his class, I'll be doing those things. So I do push a lot of stuff through email. Well, another thing I'd like to ask you is when you see a zero, when you go back and you look in your grade book and you have zeros, I've talked to some faculty about this. Well, what do you do when you see the zeros that you just put in there? What do you do about it? Do you wait for them to look in the grade book and let you know that they're concerned that they got that zero? If they got a zero, they're probably not looking in the grade book, would be my guess. So I email them, and I'm like, hey, I think we need to get together. I think we need to talk. Well, let me tap you on the shoulder and remind you that you're a grad student in my class as you're on the subway or at Pilates or whatever it is that you're doing where that email reaches you. I've had a lot of success with that. And I think mostly it just lets them know that I care about it. And you know what? Let's see if we can't fix it for next week. And that's true too, Sandra, as far as they realize, like in the, the 8th inning, the 6th inning, the 6th week that, I have all these zeros and now I want to do it and get it all squared away. That can be a problem. And, but that 80% of you that's reaching out to them early on, tapping them on the shoulder through email, as I like to call it, it really does. Kind of changes the relationship you can have with them. I'm just taking some time here to look through and see. All right, well, I think we're about wrapping it up with this, and I certainly appreciate everybody's time. I'm tickled to death that you're attending our Ed Talks, And I would like to remind you that next month is going to be on the subject of hallmarks of the emotional mind, and that will be by Dr. Alan Belcher, and that name is probably familiar to most of you because he did participate last year with some of our Ed Talks, and I think that he'll bring some interesting perspective to the idea of the hallmarks of the emotional mind. The speaker today was Dr. Melissa Phillips. Kathy. You too, Keith. Good to see some friendly faces here. I appreciate that, Susan. All we can do is try, but you'd be surprised how far it can take our students when we do. Y'all have a great evening. On behalf of the College of Education, I'm Dr. Jackie Kiger. I'll see you out there.